You want to take it from here, Bam Bam?
Bam, 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 bam. You want to take it from here, Emerald?
Bam!
Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, Jaron Boots Ennis, both of them come out with the win in the Wells Fargo Center at Philadelphia. Both of them remain undefeated, and both of them gave the fans a pretty good show. Overall, it seemed like a very successful night. However, there are some questions on Jaron Boots Ennis' side. And for Jesse Rodriguez, I mean, look, he's answering all the questions. He's checking all the boxes as to becoming a future star in boxing. We're going to get to all of that. But we're going to start off with Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Pedro Guevara. Jesse Bam Rodriguez finishes Pedro Guevara for the first time in Pedro Guevara's career with a third round KO. And look, I don't want to toot my horn or anything, but 2-2, I said he was going to cut that angle and he was going to land the uppercut. The only things I got wrong was the round, and I said it was going to be a left instead of it was a right. But regardless, shout out to Jesse Rodriguez. All right, he knocked him down earlier in the fight with a straight. Pedro got back up from that, and then next thing you know, if you go in back and you look at the knockout, he had him at a terrible angle. I mean, Pedro, there was nothing he could do. It was like Pedro was kind of stuck there. It's like his head was kind of stuck, and it was right in the perfect place for Jesse Rodriguez to throw that uppercut, and he ended up getting the knockout because of it. Now, overall, we're going to get straight into it. As far as strategy, Breezy, on a scale of 1 to 10, and remind you, this is two fighters combined. What would you give the strategy?
The reason I say 9 is because if you look at the fight, Ben Rodriguez was walking him down. And even at times where Guevara would try to throw a shot, he was countering it. And then the thing about it is he kept attacking the body. I said from the jump, when I was watching the fight, I said if he keeps attacking his body, this fight is going to be over with early. And that's exactly what he kept doing. And the thing about it is that's that intimidating factor that Ben Rodriguez has, is that when he's walking you down and he's backing you up against the ropes and whatnot, is you got to look out for that. And the thing about it is he kept putting the jab on him. Then he kept sticking him to the body, sticking him to the body, sticking him to the body. Ben kept targeting that body. And it just goes to show you, and you saw the fight, you saw how comfortable Ben Rodriguez looked in there. He looked like he wasn't worried about anything at all. Even if there was times where Pedro would throw something back, it didn't really bother Ben Rodriguez, because you know what he did? He counted. What did he do? Counted to the body. Come back up, hit him with another jab. Come back up with another straight. And anytime Pedro tried to open up, he went to the body. So he made Pedro open up tonight. And because he made Pedro open up tonight, he made Pedro pay tonight. So I would have to give it a 9. You know, to me, it was dominating performance, you know, even though it didn't really go along, but it was very much a dominating, intimidating performance. And the fact that Bam put him down in that manner in just so short time period, it just goes shows you how elite he is for somebody at his age, his young age, I may add.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. I'm gonna give it an 8. I think Pedro Guevara had a good game plan, and honestly, you could tell every single time Jesse would throw something, Pedro would throw something back. You mentioned that. And I got to give Pedro a lot of credit. Not many people are willing to stand there into the fire with Bam Rodriguez and trade with him, you know? But overall, what I liked about Pedro was targeting and having success targeting the body of Jesse Bam Rodriguez early on those rounds. However, in my opinion, it wasn't enough, obviously, because Jesse Rodriguez is such a great fighter. It wasn't enough for him to kind of take those rounds. I had it 3-0 basically. And then obviously the knockout happened. When the first knockdown happened with that straight, you could tell that jab was affecting Pedro. And I remember the commentators saying both of them were looking for that uppercut for some strange reason. And whichever one was going to land it first, that was going to be the one that was going to get the advantage. And it just so happens that the first person to land an uppercut was Jesse Rodriguez. It wasn't the uppercut that knocked him out, but eventually he got very comfortable with that uppercut and he started using it. Like you mentioned, Jesse Rodriguez did a very good job of going to the body on Pedro as well. And when they were on those inside exchanges, even though they were going tit for tat, it seemed like Jesse Rodriguez had the more pop in his punch. And you could tell when Jesse realized that Pedro didn't have the power to kind of keep him at bay, Jesse was like, I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to do what I got to do. And I'm going to get this guy out early. So, I mean, shout out to Jesse Rodriguez. And on top of that, after this performance, I mean, look, the dude's a top 5 pound for pound fighter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look, I mean, there's only 4 people. You can argue 5, but 4 people that I think are better than him. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he jumped Canelo. I wouldn't be surprised if Canelo dropped another spot because of this performance. But overall, you just never know because of competition and everything like that. But as far as strategy, I think Pedro had a great strategy. I think Jesse Rodriguez, like always, had a great strategy. And I gotta give it an 8. I thought Pedro did a very good job of also maintaining distance. I feel like Jesse Rodriguez kind of adjusted to that in like the first round or whatever, and he was able to kind of get into the inside. So overall, I just feel like this just showed that Jesse was just a better fighter. I think that's what it came down to. So as far as strategy, I got to give it an 8. Now, as far as excitement, Breezy, scale of 1 to 10, how exciting was this fight? In my opinion, I thought this was more exciting in the main event. But overall, what do you grade on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as excitement?
The reason I give it an 8 is because it's like I say all the time, when you know a fighter's skill level and you know the potential that they hold and you know what they bring in the ring, especially with the kind of competition that they're in with, you kind of always know what to expect. And it's no discredit to Bam, but it's like how many of us kind of already knew that Bam was going to go in there and basically stop him. Now, can we say, did we expect him to stop him that early? No. And that's where that high grade comes in. That's the reason why I have it ranked at an 8, because I didn't think it was going to be that early. But at the same time, though, we all knew within he was going to get stopped, right or wrong. But, so I give it about an 8. And like I said, too, this is another reminder, too, of how much he goes to that body. If y'all want to, y'all can go take a page out of the book and look at the one Estrada knockout. When he hit him into the body, that's, picture that Mario's talking about, the coldest picture ever and whatnot. So, and it just also goes to show you that he has a lethal, threat to the body. And that's for anybody that gets in the ring with him. So I give it an 8.
I'll agree with that. I give it an 8. I think that it was a very exciting fight for the 3 rounds that lasted, even though those 3 rounds were pretty short. I feel like it was definitely action packed from round 1 to round 3. It wasn't like, even though Pedro didn't win any of the rounds, it wasn't like Pedro was just a sitting duck. It wasn't like he was just there taking punches and he wasn't fighting back. No, Pedro was trying to fight back, and I give him a lot of credit for that. There were times where he was trying to push back Jesse Rodriguez. There were times where he was going to Jesse's body. There were times where he was counterpunching Jesse, and I mean, and Jesse had to kind of like regroup for a second and then get back to what he was doing. But obviously, I felt like it was action packed through the first 3 rounds, so I gotta give it an 8. It would have been better if it lasted longer, if it was a little bit more competitive. But overall, I gotta give it an 8 for excitement. I thought that the way Jesse Rodriguez ended this fight, I mean, Jesus, this guy, I mean, he's something else, Breezy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they said right now he's like the youngest champion and he's 24 years old. So overall, I mean, we got to give him a lot of credit. Youngest male champion, obviously. Fondora's sister, Gabriela Fondora, she became the youngest undisputed champion in boxing or whatever. Congrats to her. But the youngest male champion, I do want to specify that real quick. But overall, as far as excitement, the knockout, the first knockdown, great. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the action that was going on in that fight. Yeah, I mean, it was a very good fight. The only thing that stopped it from being a 9 or a 10, it didn't go that long, and overall, it wasn't competitive. If those two things happened, it would have very well been a 10, but I got to give it an 8. Now, it was a mandatory challenge, for the WBC Super Flyweight Championship. Overall, man, scale of 1 to 10. I mean, where do we put it on here, dude?
It's extremely high for somebody like Ben Rodriguez. I mean, because he said he wants to get in there in your way. I know that's probably like a matchup that, we're all kind of looking forward to. I mean, it's so much he can do. I mean, that's a fight that could be made down the line in the future. I know as far as Pedro, I would say, try to get back in to the title picture as much as you can. I mean, there's so much you can do at that division. I mean, and the thing about it is he's kind of like in Inouye's position. He's running through the competition. I give it a 9 because I think the fight with him Inoue down the line would be something spectacular. And they're both kind of like in the same position because Inoue is running through all this competition. He's running through all his competition. So what better way to do it to make a spectacular fight with the two, power puncher versus power puncher, skill for skill. They're both, great in the inside, both great at the outside. So I feel like the stakes would be very high. I give it about a 8.
We'll talk about impact real quick. We'll go to impact and then we'll do stakes. Basically, as far as the impact that this fight had, Breezy's absolutely right. this gets closer to setting up an in-a-way fight. Obviously, with Pedro beating Pedro, we expected him to do that. So as far as impact, I do agree with him. I give it an 8. Obviously, before everybody kept talking about Inoue, but the one guy that nobody was talking about was Junto. So I believe that Junto might come first. Look, I think Inoue right now he's in a couple weight classes ahead. I think he's probably a little bit more advanced than Bam right now, so I think that fight might have to wait a little bit. But I would like to see Junto first, and I feel like this fight does it get him one step closer to a Junto or an Inoue, maybe even a Estrada rematch? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was supposed to win this fight. So as far as impact, I mean, I'll give it an 8. I'll be generous, but overall, I mean, can we really say like the impact was really that big? I mean, yes, the super flyweight championship was on the line. He had to face his mandatory and Pedro Guevara. It wasn't like this was a rematch with Estrada. It wasn't like this was a Chocolito that everybody was talking about. Him fighting. I know they had that big sparring session or whatever and now they're all of a sudden having interested talks. That's one thing. But as far as impact, man, I got to give it an 8. Um, yeah, because it does bring him closer to Naoya Inoue, and it does bring him closer, obviously, to Junto Nakatani. Now, as far as stakes of this fight, not like future fights ahead, just this fight in itself. On a scale of 1 to 10, we talked about WBC belt on the line. Oh, that's great. But overall, as far as stakes of this fight, what would you rate it, Breezy?
The 7 because of the belt. I mean, there was really nothing else besides the belt on the line. I mean, like I said, if you look at Pedro, it was an unmatched type matchup, and it was just kind of like of a matchup where Ben Rodriguez would basically go in there and put on a show, show off his skills, and put on a nice show for the Philly crowd. So, I mean, aside from that, you gotta give it a 7. There was really nothing else attacked, as far as the stakes besides the belt. And usually I try to bring that up high, but I feel like now I have to kind of bring that up as high as the competition is. You know what I'm saying? So as far as that, I have to give it about a 7. Now, if this would have been in somebody's case where it was like somebody that was, of a high level fighter that could bring that kind of fight and the belt was on the line, maybe an 8 or not. But just because it's just the belt, I'd be generous and just give it a 7.
Agree with that. I got to give it a 7 overall. I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, you touched up on it. I don't want to keep dragging along. You touched up on it. I mean, the opponent quality wasn't really too great, too crazy. He was a former world champion, I guess. So, I mean, that kind of, if you wanted to bump it up a little bit because of that, sure. But I got to give it a 7. I mean, WBC championship, we all knew that Jesse Rodriguez was going to beat him. You know what I'm saying? The stakes on the line. I mean, if he lost, it would have been huge. I said if he lost this fight, it probably would have been close to a 10. But he won. He did what he was supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? And he did it in decorated fashion. So overall, I mean, I got to give it a 7 as well. I think it keeps him in line for future fights and everything like that. But as far as the stakes of this fight, I mean, Jesse Rodriguez won, and as of right now, I mean, he might bump up a spot on the pound for pound list, and that's about it. He's already number 1 in his division. Nothing really changes over there. So overall, I got to give it a 7. And with that being said, the fight grade for this is 7.88. That would rank it number 1 on our list. So, you know what? Overall, it was a good fight. It had a good little outcome. It had a little good little, action-packed fight, little tit for tat. But overall, I mean, the result was what everybody expected. Jesse Rodriguez was going to come out on top, and he was going to get that victory by knockout. Now, Jaron Boots Ennis versus Karen Chukhadzhian. Before the fight, they interviewed Karen Chukhadzhian. He said, I got some surprises. Boy, did he ever, because this was a very, very competitive fight for those first 5 or 6 rounds. And then all of a sudden, it really started taking a turn. So, you know what, Breezy? Let's start off with the strategy for both fighters. Jaron Boots Ennis, Karen Chukhadzhian, scale of 1 to 10. How did you see it?
Okay, for the strategy, I give it about a 7, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because, and you know what? I already know how y'all do. Y'all are so fickle. Y'all are going to sit right here and say that Boots is bum, Boots is a trash. But here's the thing. Boots went in there this time, and you tell Boots was looking to get that stop, but she was standing in the pocket. He was trying to attack the body. He kept trying to pressure down on Chukhadzhian, and Chukhadzhian was not having it. And I kind of told y'all in the breakdown was that Chukhadzhian had fast hand. He was very swift. He was very going to be quick, and he was going to use his head movement, and he was going to be in there to try to rough things up with Jaron Ennis. Now, did I think it was going to be that rough? No. Did I think it was going to be that action packed? No, I did not. And to be honest with you, if we really want to be honest, Chukhadzhian did way much better this fight than he did the first fight. I mean, he was catching Boots. Even though Boots was using that very swift, nice, slick head move that he always uses, even though Boots was using his foot movement and whatnot, it's just he was getting caught. And getting caught in between those exchanges and whatnot, you could tell Boots was going in there to look for the knockout. And from the point on, he said that he's going in there to get a knockout. And I think boxers got to stop doing that. Don't try to predict it. Don't try to force it. Don't try to call it. Just go in there and do what you got to do and let it come naturally. And you could tell by the way Boots was fighting, he was looking to get that knockout because he was. I mean, Chukhadzhian was in the pocket all night countering him. Body, head, catching him. Even the coaches was trying to tell Boots in the corner, man, like, hey, like, you gotta take that risk and whatnot. But even time he tried to take that risk, Chukhadzhian responded back. So I have to give it about a 7. You know, Chukhadzhian, he really showed that he's a true dog and he's got heart. And Jaron Boots Ennis showed that if you can pressure him, if you can catch him in the midst of those exchanges, you can really, kind of throw him off his game. So I give it a 7.
I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I thought both of these guys had a very, very good strategy. I thought Chukhadzhian's strategy early was very, very effective, and there were times where he clipped him and he kind of rocked him a little bit. What I liked about Karen Chukhadzhian is we talked about it. We said you have to chain your punches together when you fight somebody like Boots Ennis. You're not going to win by throwing one punch because he's going to come in with 2 and he's going to outland you either way. With Karen Chukhadzhian, what he did a very good job with was he was going to go into the inside. That left hook was hitting all night long. It seemed like Jaron Boots Ennis couldn't stop that left hook. Karen Chukhadzhian did a lot of his work on the inside, which is a new weakness that we now discovered with Jaron Boots Ennis. I feel more comfortable with him on the outside than the inside because when a fighter is coming forward and going on the inside, and if a fighter has decent defense like Karen Chukhadzhian, he can end up landing some good, clean, crisp punches on Jaron Boots Ennis. What I also liked about him was he wasn't staying still like the last time. Obviously, he was running around the first time around, but this time he was basically moving to get into the inside. Karen Chukhadzhian knew that his best chances were to go into the inside, land 2-3 punch combinations, and slip out. I have no problem with him doing that. All I'm saying is throw those punches and bunches, and he wasn't doing that at the first fight. The second fight, he was. Now, what happened? As you got towards round 5, that's when Jaron Boots Ennis really started picking up the pressure. That's when the urgency really started hitting Jaron Boots Ennis. He's like, I got to go in there. So what did he do? He really attacked the body a lot this fight. He really made it a big key to attack the body and tire out Karen Chukhadzhian. And after that 6th round, Karen Chukhadzhian was pretty exhausted. You could tell that he wasn't as fast as he was in those early rounds. You could tell that his punches didn't have as much pop, and that gave Jaron Boots Ennis the chances and the opportunities to start pressuring a lot more and start taking those rounds. He started landing the uppercuts more. He started landing to the body. The jab was a big problem as well. He started coming in with power punches. He started a lot of his combinations with those power punches. And so I feel like Jaron Boots Ennis had a really good game plan. Once he basically realized that Karen Chukhadzhian was a completely different fighter from the first fight. He was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pressure. Now it's time for me to get that urgency. I'm going to go to his body. I'm going to tire this guy out, and I'm going to try to, get this knockout. To your credit, you can't keep trying for the knockout. It's something natural. It'll happen if it happens. And if it don't, it don't. Now, we did say at the end of that prediction episode that it wouldn't be a bad idea to bet unanimous decision. Even though we didn't predict unanimous decision, we thought that Boots was going to get this knockout. We said it wasn't a bad idea because he went the distance when it once. Maybe he'll go again. So if y'all betted on unanimous decision, if y'all just took that little piece of advice and said, you know what, let's put my money on it, y'all would have won a lot of money today. That's why you guys need to be listening to the betting advice that we give you. Our predictions are not the betting advice. Listen to the whole thing. But overall, getting back to the strategy, I got to give it an 8.5. I think both of these guys I think Karen Chukhadzhian had a good strategy coming in. I think he had a good strategy to try to finish it out. The problem was he was just too tired to complete it. And I think Jaron Boots Ennis did a very good job of adjusting. His beginning strategy, I don't think it was that great. You could tell he kind of got a little careless in the first round. He started like leaving his head open and everything like that. So there's some things you could critique with Karen Chukhadzhian. I feel like he didn't get himself prepared like he should have to last the 12 rounds and to make it more of a competitive fight. I had it 106, 101. I had it a lot closer than the judges did, but overall, 8.5 as far as strategy. Now, as far as excitement, Breezy, scale of 1 to 10, how exciting was this fight? I don't think it was as exciting as Jesse Rodriguez versus Guevara, but how exciting was this fight, Breezy?
I don't think you want to ask me that question. Uh, 5. Look, hold on. 4, y'all attack me. I want y'all to understand. Go look at Boo's best performance and then come back here. And look, if y'all want to say, well, it was exciting because they went blow for blow for blow for blow, that's fine. That's cool and all too. But can I just be honest? Like, to those of y'all out there, because I know some of y'all are very strict about this, about the holding, non-holding. The holding got so bad in this damn fight. Chukhadzhian got a point deducted from him. This man was so damn tired. He was holding on Boots to the point where he had a point deducted. And it's like you could tell it was visibly making Jaron Ennis frustrated because it's like he kept trying to go up in there and get that stoppage, but it's like he kept getting held on to. And even the commentators was like, well, Chukhadzhian is holding his own tonight. Oh yeah, he is holding his own tonight. Literally holding the hell out of Boots. And I get it. And look, I'm not trying to jab at Chukhadzhian because it's like it's boxing. You gotta do what you gotta do to survive. But it's like, damn, I'm like, did Chukhadzhian get so damn hard that he opened his eyes and he thought Jaron Boots was one of his family members? Like, come here. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I, and I don't hate him because you got to do what you got to do, but at the same time, it doesn't call for the most entertaining kind of fight. I'm not knocking it because this is boxing. That's what you got to do. But at the same time, though, I'm not gonna call it entertaining, no matter who does it. But if you're gonna hold on all night, it's gonna be a boring fight. But at the same time, you still have to do what you got to do to make sure you don't get knocked out. So, to my credit, I give it a 5.
I'm gonna give it a 7. I thought the fight was somewhat exciting. Again, it wasn't as exciting as Bam and Pedro Guevara, but I gotta give it a 7. But you're absolutely right about the holds. See, I thought in the first 5 rounds, first 6 rounds, I was like, Karen Chukhadzhian is really holding his own. He's really putting up a good fight. Then as he started getting tired and he realized he couldn't really hurt Boots, or he couldn't really get to Boots as much as he did in the early rounds, he started holding a lot. And the referee warned him and he kept on doing it. I mean, some of those holds were bad. Some of those holds I'm looking at, I'm like, come on. Like, he's like, it's almost like they're wrestling on a mat here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost looks like he's ready to give him like a Bailey to belly, like suplex or something like that. But overall, yeah, no, I'll give it a 7 though, overall, because I do believe that there was a lot of excitement. I do believe that he clipped and rocked Boots a decent amount of times. Boots had that knockdown when he applied the pressure onto him and everything like that. So overall, there was a lot of action in this fight. But the reason why I don't give it a 10 or anywhere close to that is because A, there was a lot of holding, and B, once it got past the 5th, 6th round, Boots just started taking over the whole fight, in my opinion. So it didn't give me that urgency or that anticipation, like, wow, who's really going to come out and win this fight? So overall, I got to give it a 7. But I completely understand why Breezy says 5. Nobody wants to keep watching a guy hold somebody. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to see that when it comes to boxing. Now, part of me wants to say 7 just to be generous. The other part of me wants to kind of bump it down a little bit. I'll say 7 only because of the. Actually, you know what? No, I put the stakes a little bit higher, and here's why. I'm gonna give it a 7.5, and the reason why is because the whole point of this fight was to see where Boots was at. Okay, this is a guy who everybody kept calling a C-level talent in Karen Chukhadzhian. Well, here's the thing. After this performance, there's a lot of questions. If he went in there, he knocked out Karen Chukhadzhian, we could say, oh, this Boots fight needs to happen. Now, after this fight, I got questions on what would happen if he fights if he fights Terence Crawford. Now I got those questions. If he knocked out Karen Chukhadzhian, I would have said, okay, yeah, let's make this fight happen. But now I got some questions. First of all, maybe he's outgrown 147 like a lot of these guys at 154. So maybe his power will translate better at 154. That's a possibility. But overall, my thing is this. If you are getting rocked by Karen Chukhadzhian, all right, what's going to happen if Boots hits you with those shots? What's going to happen if Errol Spence decides to come back to prime Errol Spence and he hits you with those shots? Sebastian Fundora is no slouch. Virgil Ortiz. Murtaza Aliyev, we saw what he did with Tim Tszyu. He hits him with those shots. God, he might die. And again, I don't think that's figuratively. He's not actually gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like, but overall, you get my point. There's a lot of questions. So actually, just because of that alone, we give it an 8. because I do feel like the stakes of this fight was if he had a very dominant performance, this would have been a lot closer to the Terence Crawford fight. Now I bet Terence Crawford is looking at it like, why would I want to fight him? Now all of a sudden, Virgil Ortiz had a bad performance last time around. Now all of a sudden, because Boots had a bad performance, this might be a very, very competitive fight now. I thought maybe after Virgil's performance, I was like, oh, Boots can go in there and make light work out of Virgil. But I'm not thinking that now, man. But overall, it's all about how Boots adjusts. But I don't think he lived up to what we expected in this fight. So overall, we expected a better performance in the first fight. It was actually a worse performance in the first fight. I feel like this does definitely jeopardize some big fights with Boots. So I'm gonna give it that 8.
I was about to say 7. His point is the only reason why I'm bumping up to 8. And I thought about it for a moment because it's like, and by the way, I already know the Terence Crawford fans, they having a whole field day with this. I already know X right now, they losing their mind. I told you, Boost is overrated. I told you, Crawford gonna stop him. Crawford gonna stop him. Relax. But I do understand why you said 8, though. And I thought about it. I was like, that's true. Because it's like, anytime a top fighter stops somebody we view as lower level, be like, all right, yeah, throw him in there. Throw him in there with Crawford. Throw him in there with Errol. Throw him in there with Virgil Ortiz. But guess what? The plot thickens now because guess what? He's getting caught in those exchanges with Karen Chukhadzhian. Now, you got to ask yourself, if he gets in there with somebody like Terence Crawford, a switch hitter that can counter you with either hand, how does that look for him? So it's like it brings element to thinking, and it raised suspicion, it raised questions. How would he look against Crawford, Virgil T? You literally made me change my original grade. That's crazy. So I gotta agree with you and say the 8.
Technically, I made the same. Actually, you know what? Switch them around because I basically explained impact and stakes. I did the same mistake Breezy did. So you know what? 8 is the impact. Now we're gonna go to stakes. If we're talking about what's actually on the line, if we're being real, IBF championship, Karen Chukhadzhian, mandatory. As far as stakes of that fight, I gotta give it. It's a 7. It's a 7. Yeah, I made the same mistake as Breezy. It's one mistake, everything like that. But overall, hey, look, this is what you're getting at to Punch's point. That this y'all are gonna see our mistakes. We humans, but you know what? Y'all can judge that for yourselves. But overall, yeah, no, stakes 7. IBF titles on the line. It was a mandatory. Um, and overall, I mean, this was a big test for Boots. That's the whole thing. It was a test. This was a real test for Boots, where Jesse Rodriguez, it wasn't a test. It was an expectation. With Boots, it was a test. Let's see what he can do in there with Karen Chukhadzhian. Is he a top 10 pound for pound fighter? And I mean, as far as the stakes that were on the line, I mean, there was an okay amount, but I'll give it a 7 overall because I just feel like the stakes, like what was really on the line was just the IBF title and it wasn't mandatory. But you know what? Boots did recover very good, and that towards those end rounds, he really started kind of running away with it. So, yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7.
Like he said, belt in the mandatory, which like I just said about around the same thing with Jesse Rodriguez. You got to give it about a 7. I mean, when there's a belt, I feel like once the belt's on the line, it brings it past that 6 range. In the level of competition, I also bumps it up too. But the thing about it is, unlike Ben Rodriguez, this was Boo's second time fighting Karen Chukhadzhian. It's the second time. And the first time, Boots edged it out and got away with it. And this time, Boots was going tick for tackle with him. And like I said, he was getting clipped and whatnot. So it's like, this was truly a test. And because it was the test that kept on going, and it just about ended just about the same way. Going to the scorecards, I mean, it just shows you, like I said, it raised that element and it raised suspicion and it raised concern. So I gotta give it a 7 because that's really was really all that brought to it. But it did have its ending perks with it too. But I give it about a 7 also.
Now, the grade. This grade is a 7.32. It barely surpassed Oshaki Foster versus Robeson Casaccio at 7.31. So it's third on the list. Obviously, the two that are above it is Jesse Bam Rodriguez at 1, and number 2 would be Murtaza versus Tim Tszyu. So low-key, I think that's a good place to put it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it all depends on how you really look at it. If you look at this fight, if you think that fight should be a higher grade than Tim Tszyu, I don't. Tim Tszyu, excuse me. I don't, because Tim Tszyu actually had that Tszyu versus Murtaza had a big impact. This one did not. My bad. Had a big impact. Stakes weren't that great. I don't gotta describe it all. You know what I'm saying? Overall, Jaron Ennis, Karen Chukhadzhian, 7.32. Does it deserve to be above O'Shaquie, Foster, and Robeson Casaccio? My opinion, yes. I'm gonna say that. In my opinion, I think it just beats it. And the reason why is because even though O'Shaquie, Foster, and Robeson Casaccio had that very close fight, and even though O'Shaquie Foster came out on top, I feel like both of these fights are very, very similar in terms of what was on the line, what was the impact. I feel like they were both very, very similar. So I think that's a good place to put it. I feel like those two are definitely neck and neck. And again, Jaron Ennis and Chukhadzhian, they barely edged it out over them. So right now they're placed at third. Jesse Rodriguez and Pedro Guevara is placed at first. That is the standard that's got to be beat. And I feel like that will not stay the number one fight. It's definitely not. But you know what I'm saying? As of right now, it is the number one fight. Now, last but not least, before we log off of here, Breezy, what should be next for Jesse Rodriguez? What should be next for Jaron Ennis? You tell me.
Jesse Rodriguez, I already told y'all, get that Inoue fight going on. And if we're talking about Boots, hypothetically, okay, move up. Didn't we have this same problem with both Arrow and Bud? Like, yeah, they had their performances and they was looking nice. Not as far as Spence case, because Spence case last fight at 147 was him getting dominated. But the same issues with them. They had outgrown the weight. And you made a good point. What if he outgrown that weight and maybe those punches are just not the same? So maybe he does have to move to 154. He moves up to another division. You got all kinds of killers there. You got Madrimov, Tim Tszyu, Murtaza, Bud, Arrow, Jermel. It's so many. It's a 154 is a pool full of sharks. And each one of those sharks got a lot they can bring to Boost. And I feel like Boost got a lot he can bring to each one of those sharks at 154. So I would like to see him move up. And if I had to give y'all a fight, first 10, I would like to see him do Virgil Ortiz. I know it's been a lot of issues. We're trying to get that fight happening in the past at 147. But damn it, I say let's try it again. I say you put your big boy pants on, put your big shoes on, tie them hoes up, and let's get something going. So, bam. You keep calling for Inoue. I don't think Inoue was going to duck that smoke from Ben Rodriguez. I say we had that. And if we talking Boots, I say we go ahead and we get Boots to move up. Why not move up? There's nobody else at 147 that's going to really get in there with him or going to pose a threat to him. Go to 154 with those sharks. And I'm sure they waiting on him just as much as they was waiting on Bud and Earl.
As far as Jesse Rodriguez, I think he should go after Junto first. But if he can't get that Junto fight for some reason, he should have a unification bout at 115 with Fernando Martinez, who is the WBA and IBF champion. I would say try with Junto, and if you can't get Junto, try that unification bout with Fernando Martinez. As far as Boots, I completely agree. Virgil Ortiz is a good one. Hey, he jumps up. Let's see him. Hey, let's see him and Charlo. Let's see how that works out. Let's see him and Charlo. If as long as Charlo, can sign a contract, he'll be ready. Let's see him and Charlo. I feel like that surpasses him and puts him in a very good position to fight Crawford or fight Earl, and basically get one of those title fights. Maybe he gets Bakaram. Who knows? But overall, I would like to see Virgil or Charlo. And if you can't get those fights, try with Mario Barrios, try unification bout. But other than that, we kind of running out of time here. So with that being said, look, make sure y'all subscribe. Make sure y'all keep on tuning in to the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What's up, y'all? If y'all love this episode, make sure y'all subscribe. You hit that notifications button. And also take a look at the recent episodes that we made before this. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.